Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Adi, and today we have our first Orlando Regionals team report. And this time, it is a very special team report because it is the team that I used to get top 16 at Orlando Regionals. And also, I'm joined, of course, by the real mastermind behind the team, by Nails. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Orlando was fun. Had some headaches getting home, but I'm here now and ready to prep for OCIC.
And how did you do at Orlando? Because you also did really well.
I got top 32. I went 8-2 in Swiss with awesome resistance and uh, lost my first round. We I wouldn't have had to deal with that uh, with day two Swiss, but CLD. It's is what it is, and I'm content with my performance.
Yeah. Uh,
During luck happens. So.
Yeah, and so again, I'm really happy with how we both did. We both top cut the biggest regional ever. It was a grueling day. I think we talked about it a little bit on Tub Takes about how how long that day was. But now we're going to talk about something a little happier, which is the team that we used. And of course, like I said, you really were the mastermind behind the team. So do you want to talk about how you ended up coming up with the six Pokemon that we ended up using this regional?
Sure. So I tend to like defensive stuff, and the Paradox Mons just threw a bunch of damage into the format without adding much utility. Uh, and so figuring out how to cope with that was like just the first step of team building. Um, I was toying around with a bunch of different iterations of like Fire, Water, Grass cores. And I really liked. I thought that that would be a common build for the team, and I really liked that this Iron Hand set that I came up with in order to deal with Arcstrom specifically. So what it does is if at any point you can force Shroom off the board, you can bring in your hands, Swords Dance as it switches in, and Terra Fire Punch forces it, either kills it if they don't have Terra available, or it forces it to Terra. And just you can put that calc up on the screen, but it like Shroom goes away. And Clear Amulet and Terrifier just mean Arcanine doesn't get to do anything to you. And I thought that beating Arcstrom was going to be really important for the tournament, and I like that Iron Hands did that. And it also is just Iron Hands, and Swords Dance Hands goes pretty crazy in a lot of matchups. With redirection support, it's good. Um,
We were
so that
looking
was what
at
I was working with.
we were looking at
Go ahead.
like the statistics from the limitless tours and whatnot, and we saw usually like the most common team in basically every single tournament was Fluttermane, Amoonguss, Arcanine, Iron Hands, Iron Bundle, and then either like Garganacl or Roaring Moon or something else. Those five Pokemon felt like they were super common, and so yeah, like you said, our number one priority, and I think everyone's number one priority going to this regional was trying to beat that core of five Pokemon.
It wasn't like the specific core of 5 months was definitely the most. They were the top five most used mons, and there was like a decent gap between them and number six. But yeah, I just wanted. Uh, it was just more about being good into like groups of them instead of all five of them. Like Arc and Shroom go together, Bunder and Flutter go together, um, and uh, like in retrospect, I think it was weird that there weren't more comps that just looked like ours. That was like the top mons and then a wild card sixth because they have a lot of synergy together. Uh, and
I think Paul Chua used these five plus Roaring Moon, and then we both cut, and that was it. That was we were the only people in top cut with this sort of configuration.
yeah, um, and like it has some shortcomings, but it also has a lot of strengths. And yeah, I just thought it was weird. But anyways, yeah. So pull up the version. Like I used this team in VGC Winter League, for my match on, it was either Monday or Tuesday before Orlando. And this was what I was planning on bringing to Orlando at that point. Um, it's uh, it's like a lot of the same sets. It has a Bruce instead of Amoonguss, but it's still bulky and trying to just um, like be redirection. And it performs a lot of the same roles. The Flutter was Dazzling Gleam at that point, and Tyranitar was just hanging out. He does cool stuff, and I think Tar's good, and it had some good performances. So, um, but like it patches Torkoal and Psyspam, which are two of the main things that you have to deal with when responding to or like when checking off the boxes on the team's like core matchups. Um, but yeah, like not too much to say about this one. It's like the same hands, yeah, and so
Yeah.
yeah, uh, and so and after that, like we were just iterating on the core a lot, and Burns recommended that uh, we the first change was he wanted Amoonguss over Bruce because the Pollen Puff cycling or like Pollen Puff regenerator, just like recursive, healing everything up and never going away game plan is like really good. Like it's very powerful, and so that was something he was into, and I was like, yeah, sure, that seems pretty good, and so Shroom got slapped on. The next change we made was putting Perish Song as the filler move over Dazzling Gleam on Fluttermane,
Hmm.
um, because Perish Song is just a good endgame, and it allows you to pressure, take 2 kills, and then perish, which is a good game plan.
Hmm.
And that happened before we put the Gothitelle on. Um, and then just like later in the process, uh, Gothitelle got added on because it was like pretty good. And
Yeah, we were looking at the teams we were losing to, and like you said, Indeed Armor was a big one that we wanted to beat, and we found that Taunt Gothitelle did really well into that matchup, and so
yeah,
and
and yeah,
it
go
helps
ahead.
versus other stuff too, right? It helps versus like Dindozo, it's really good into. It doesn't let them switch out, and so and adding a perish mode that just is something that your opponents are forced to respect was something that was really cool and added a whole other dimension to the team.
Yeah, so this is probably a good time to mention that I've never used Perish at a tournament before. The whole play style of like pivoting defensively and shadow tagging and locking your opponent's board down, and all that is stuff that I heavily vibe with, and like it, I probably should have used it at some point before now, but just it hasn't happened. But like Burn suggested that it get added, and so I was pretty down, and like uh, it ended up really overperforming, like compared to my expectations. The just like Perish straight up won like a game in my set with pretty minimal counterplay in like half of my rounds in day one.
Mm-hmm.
It was just very powerful.
Yeah, that was
Uh,
my experience as well. I would go perish mode game two almost every single time unless there was something that really stopped me from doing it. And most of the time, they were so scared of the other oppressive modes that we have that they just kind of lost to it.
yep. The SD hands and the like bundle flutter force out like defensive counterplay, and running defensive counterplay into Perish is just dangerous. And so it's like a little bit of lead roulette, but it's lead roulette where your modes still kind of work. Like the most common Perish mode is just Flutter Arc with back Goth Shroom, and that also can just like play bouncy, grindy games, even if they have like a relatively okay mode into it. You still end up generally just going for like Perish switch to Goth,
Mm-hmm.
and then like fake out switch to Arcanine and like that type of jazz. But yeah, uh, Parrish was just very good at the tournament, and like evidenced by Wolf winning and a couple of us in cut, I guess. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and there was also another pairs team that was Marcus, a Canadian player who made Cup Cut with the team that Justin had used about a week before the tournament to win a Nina Pokebros tour. And so I guess that's something that we kind of alluded to. Justin was helping us with team building as well. And he said he went 7-3, so he actually had a pretty good performance, but decided that he was too busy building the winning Oceania Internats team to join because he wasn't happy that he hadn't top cut. But he was really instrumental in building this team as well. And
yep.
like we mentioned, so this team, there's a funny story that this team was originally the team that Wolf was using. That Justin had played him on ladder. I think it was Justin. It might have been someone else. And was like, "Oh, this is a cool team." Ripped it and then played around with it. Changed the Screamtail set, Screamtail to the Fluttermane or something like that, or Amoonguss. I forget
No,
exactly.
in Iron Hands. There's definitely a Fluttermane on the Parrish team,
Yes.
but yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Yes. And then so he made some
yeah.
changes to it, and we thought, this would be just a fun team to stream with. I think Alex streamed his tournament run, and Justin ended up winning the tournament with the team. And after the tournament, one the team was made public, which is how I think Marcus ended up using basically the same team because the rental code was out there. I think a bunch of people tested it out, but also I think that the I think that was when Justin was like, okay, I'm going to be the best, Fluttermane, Arcanine, Amoonguss player. That was the core that he said was really, really powerful. And that was, I think, part of why we ended up putting the Amoonguss on the team was because Justin was so convinced that that combination of three
Yeah.
Pokemon was really,
Hmm.
really impressive. And then his expertise using Gothitelle Parish really helped us figure out exactly what we need to do to kind of flesh out that mode as well.
Yep. Uh, Nothing to add really. Just yeah.
So it is kind of funny how Wolf ended up winning the tournament, and he ended up like kind of inspiring what we ended up using as well, and making it
In a roundabout manner, yeah.
in a very roundabout manner.
But
He
yeah.
ended up contributing to four of the top cut teams, which is kind of funny. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess did you have more to add about the team building process?
I mean, there were a lot more iterations I went through of Fire, Water, Grass, like balance. There was a bunch of Tauros versions, like Water Tauros, and I thought that was pretty good, and I still think it's pretty solid. But Bundle ended up being what we went with, and I'm still not even totally convinced that Bundle was better than Palafin at this tournament. Um, but this is what we used, and Bundle has some better matchups. Like yeah, but we can get into just talking about the choices. I mean,
Yeah, we
not
can.
that there's really too much to discuss. Honestly, it's uh,
Mhm.
like nothing is too out of the ordinary here. Like Fluttermane's a Fluttermane. Ghost Terra allows it to Oko opposing Fluttermane, which can be a little problematic. I mean, it's just a really good mon. It's not even that it's that problematic. It's just it's a really
So
good mon, and being able to kill it is good. Um,
so
Amoonguss
I'm
Protect
gonna
is like good.
I'm gonna preface this entire section with these are not these are not all the exact TV spreads that we ran. We did. I know Nick is going to Oceania and Justin's going to Oceania. So they want to, maybe keep a little bit hidden. So if you want to play around with these EV spreads, they're not anything special, but these are pretty close to what we ended up running. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, and to add to the Fluttermane discussion, the Ghost Terra helped with a couple things. It ended up getting a little more reach, not only into other Fluttermanes like a Terra to guarantee that you sometimes get them into range to Oko, but also I think Dindozo was tending towards Terra Steel, and if you need to power through Dindozo, a lot of times Fluttermane was the best way to do it because you didn't want to have to hit your Hydro Pumps. So that was a big part of why we chose Terra Ghost. Of course, you could also just Perish Song them, but that wasn't always possible because that does take
yeah,
a number
it's
of turns.
slower, and sometimes you just want to damage through it. It gives you flexibility, and so yeah. And I also thought people were going to be more prepared for Terra Fairy Fluttermane,
Oh, also
and
Goldengo. Goldengo
dodging.
is another one because we were a little weak
Yep.
to Goldengo, and as a pairs team, you might expect that. And so we, especially like covert cloak versions that you couldn't snarl down, and so Terra ghosting to even Oko, the bulkier Goldengo, forcing them to Terra was something that was also really valuable for us.
Hmm. Um, yeah, I guess we'll just go through mon by mon.
Mhm.
Um, Amoonguss, pretty straightforward. It's just um, it's the good moves, and Protect is not completely standard, but it's a lot more important than it was in Series 1. And especially on Perish, it's just really good to have Protect on like as many Pokemon as you can.
Mhm.
The Arcanine set is something that I have some regret about. All of the moves were good, but Protect was also um, like uh, just it would have been nice to have it in a lot of matchups. And the Snarl Terra Dark was intended to be good against Armarouge, but at least in my top 32 set, I ran into weakness policy Armarouge, and Arcanine just kind of gets blown back by that. And like the lack of protect was bad, and there were also some covert cloak Armarouges that
Mhm.
had uh, had it to deal with Arcanine, and
Yeah.
it just generally was annoying to deal with. And I think that the Arcanine set was a little bit of a whiff.
Yeah, I agree. Protect would have come up. I think that if I was running this team back, I would run Protect over E-Speed. I think Snarl is too important into the teams that don't have Cover Cloak on Arcanine or on Armor or Woldenga or whatever. But E-Speed also like won you at top 32 set essentially, so it's hard into like Sash Great Tusk. So like it's hard to say that it didn't put in work. It's still a really good move, and like we put it on the team for a reason. It's just like Protect is really important to flesh out the Perish mode a little further, especially since you are bringing it almost every time you bring Perish. It's a really good mod to pivot into on that last turn. And then all of a sudden, when you do that, they have a slot they can double target into, which is a little awkward. The other thing about Terra Dark is that I did lose my Swiss game to Cortex, who was on Side Spam as well, because he just kind of read the Terra Dark. It's a pretty obvious play to make, and went for helping hand Armor Cannon and KO'd the Arcanine. So that was something else where it
Yeah,
is a little susceptible to that as well.
yeah, it's read heavy. But
It's read
there's like,
heavy, and like if they get the read wrong, they don't even lose if they're like covert cloak or um, if they're weakness policy. So it just gets really awkward.
yeah. Let's see. Iron Hands. It kind of explained what it's there to do, but yeah, it's there to. Like all of the choices on the set are made to specifically be good into Arcshroom. What I was trying to do with the set was to basically have the matchup spread of Belly Drum hands, uh, but without running Belly Drum because I think that Belly Drum has to be hard supported and is kind of inconsistent. And I wanted hands to be better into like um, offense type teams, which I thought would look a little different than they did. I probably would have made some different choices regarding the slot had I made a better meta read, but like the set was still quite good. Uh, just probably could have been something else. And moving forward, the hand slot is something that can be messed with. It still has to do some things for the team, and I'm not trying to say Hands was bad at the tour. It was quite good. Just it didn't line up well enough into some other teams, and so um, that's like the Hands and the Arcanine are probably and a little bit the bundle are my main regrets about the team.
I think that so I actually ended up hitting on a lot of Arcshroom teams in the tournament, which maybe is why I did so well when I just like even my rounds nine, which was the essentially the win and in for top cut. I ran into the pretty standard six, like the Paul Chua six, I think. So it's just like very. It was not Paul Chua. It was Calvin, but it was super good in that matchup and into like
Yeah, it farms that matchup. It's like not even close. It just
yeah, and he had
um,
like breaking swipe, roaring moon, and he just could do nothing about the hands. It was great. So I
yep.
ended up facing it a bunch, and that was very convenient. I think this is a set that like again maybe doesn't match up into the metagame right now, but depending on how it ends up developing, is something to keep in your back pocket because I wouldn't be surprised if as standard starts to develop a little more, this was really good going into like Charlotte regionals in a month or so.
Yeah, like I think there is a meta that the set is like amazing into. Like it does very powerful things into some of the core mons in the format. I think it was like a 9 out of 10 bring. And I think we needed a 10 out of 10 bring in order to win the tournament. And um, we both cut, and we got top 32 and 16 at an 800 player tour. So I'm I'm beating myself up about something that like we really did quite well at. Just uh, I'm a little bit emo about losing in top 32, and when I thought I had a really good tour and I put in really good prep. But
Hmm.
yeah,
And
no,
yeah,
the
like
hands
you
was
said, we did say we were not going to complain too much about the day two this structure, but like because we talked a little bit about it a lot on top takes.
yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a tournament where man, like top 32 cut is just so unforgiving. You just like if you hit a bad matchup, you're just out, and even if you had a good tour, so that sucks.
Yeah. Uh, Gothitol, um, like Wolf had heal pulse over taunt. I thought that taunt was well, one, it was really important to have into size spam type stuff to deny trick room being set up. I thought that snarl plus taunt was just going to lock up their board pretty effectively, and there were some size spams that I just kind of uh, goth arced into and taunted everything and snarled everything, and they kind of rolled over and died to it. And you just get to stall at the first wave of Trick Room with Lefty's Goth, Darkenine, spamming Snarl. It's like really cool. And then some other matchups where that didn't work,
Hmm.
it was more problematic. But yeah, I thought the Gothitol set was really good. It was also very good in the mirror, or like against Wolf. The set was very good, and we'll go into that later. But yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that the Gothel set was like perfect.
Yeah, I agree. I think this was the right formula for the team. We considered hypnosis over psychic for a little bit and ended up dropping it because we did need damage into both Amoonguss and Great Tusk. Those are really valuable. Um, Taunting the Shroom was another reason we had taunt was because Amoonguss is still maybe the best Pokemon in the entire format, and yes, we have an Amoonguss, and yes, we have an Arcanine, and yeah, our Iron Bundle and Iron Hands can put pressure on it, but despite that, and despite having Taunt on Gothitelle to lock up board states where Amoonguss is on the field, we still felt a little weak to Amoonguss. It's just that good a Pokemon, so
Yep.
you do need like all the counterplay you can get.
Yeah. I really do think the hypnosis over psychic set is like pretty viable. It just it has a lot. It has stronger synergy with the Perish mode. Um,
Hmm.
and hypnosis plus taunt just kind of locks down board positions, but it doesn't do it like well enough all of the time, and so it's just not something we were allowed to go with. But it's like terrifying to look at Hypnogoth and know that it's just going to be spamming Hypno at you. And that's also why Leftovers was originally put on the set. Um, just when you have sleeping Pokemon and you're not really doing much, Leftovers gets a lot more time to tick, and it was better on the Hypno over Psychic version. When we were trying to find the item for Goth, we were pretty married to Citrus Berry and Mungus. And I'll stand by that. I think that Citrus is just excellent on the Mon.
Hmm.
Um, and Leftovers is pretty much the best bulk item. So yeah, we just stuck with it, and Leftovers is pretty good.
Yeah, if
No
you really want,
complaints.
if you really want people to hate you, you can run Bright Powder and get your double protect odds on Perish from 33 to 40%. But other than that, it's probably supposed to be Leftovers.
And Bright Powder has the funny interaction where you can miss Pollen Puff against yourself, and that was why we ended up not bothering with it.
Uh,
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
okay.
and
Talk
last
about
one,
bundle.
uh, yeah, bundle just uh, booster energy bundle outspeeds Great Tusk and Tailwind. We were worried about Talon Tusk because we have hands and we have arc, and like it's just a potent offensive team comp, and so booster bundle gives you a lot more room to just do stuff in that matchup. Uh, Apparently, we still didn't figure out the matchup. You can watch my stream set from round 9 against Yotam. I got my ass kicked. I I don't think I played the matchup perfectly, and he also hit some reads, but um, the matchup is dire even if I get a bunch of turns right,
Okay,
and
that's fair.
he just didn't.
I did beat Luca, who also had Talon Tusk in top 32. And it was basically because of the bundle. The bundle put in so much work. So it did do a decent enough job into maybe not the most dedicated Tusk teams because he had a Dozo mode as well. And it's obviously really good into Dozo as well. But
Yep.
Yotam was what, AV, right?
Um, I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
Uh,
Um,
I just got rolled regardless. I don't think
okay.
he was AV. My gut is he was Life Orb.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah, he was Life Orb because he OHKO'd my Iron Hands with Earthquake like through Rage Powder.
Uh,
Just like Terra Ground, Life Orb, Earthquake, got a high roll against hands and it just did 100.
yeah.
And
Okay.
I thought I was pretty okay. I might not have been, but I thought I was. That just, I might be lying, but
Mhm.
about, well, no, I definitely thought I was. Whether or not I was is like what I'm lying about, but yeah. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
So I
yeah,
mean,
that was what we wanted Bundle to do. Like Palafin's also playable on the slot and is also pretty good. But uh, yeah, it just like feel free to mess around with it.
mhm. uh, like I said, I really like the fact that you hit Amogus harder. Uh, I I think that Hydro Pump is you just have to hit it sometimes. I mean,
Mhm.
Nick, you clicked Sleep Powder and Breathless Blades for multiple formats, so I know
I sure did.
you can vibe with that. I hit Blind Hypnoses for all of 2022, so I'm okay with it.
Mhm.
And for what it's worth, like I did lose my with the one set that I lost in Swiss. I lost game one because I missed a Hydro Pump. Like that's gonna happen sometimes.
Mhm.
I think I generally got pretty lucky with Hydro Pumps. I think that was the only game deciding one that I missed. And I think that some other people who are in the team were not as lucky, and that's just kind of how it goes when you have to run a Pokemon like Iron Bundle.
Um, Bundle was my least brought mon on the team for what it's worth. Um, and I barely clicked Hydro Pump. Like I definitely clicked it at some points, but um, like I can't remember missing any important ones. But that's just because I didn't bring it much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
it's just like
yeah.
I really just don't think there's any other water types in the format. Like we talked about Palafin, I really was not sold on Palafin at all. Uh, it,
I wasn't sold on it before the tour. After the tour and after like toying it with a little bit, I think it's pretty solid. I don't think it's incredible, but like it's about as good as Bundle. It does some stuff better. Like it can eat a hit, which is cool. Um, and I think it does about as well into Talon Tusk stuff. So
Mhm.
um, yeah, it's just also good.
Sure.
That's all I really have to say about it.
Yeah, I mean that's something that you can play around with if you're looking at using this team at a later event. But
Mhm.
yeah, like this team was not perfect by any means, but it was. Uh, I like the decisions that we made, and now maybe with the information we have after Orlando Regionals, now that we know both having played a bunch of games with this team, and on top of that know what other good players were running at this tournament, I think that you should definitely try to make adjustments based on that. But going to this tournament, I think that the team did really well. Obviously, getting top 16, top 32, top 64. I think two top 64s out of 800 odd players is or 700 odd players is absolutely insane. It's a really good result, and
Yep.
yeah, I was really happy with how the team played. And it is funny. Like I think again, we talked about this on Top Takes, but Gothitelle was definitely the standout from this tournament. It was not a high usage mon, and then like there were 10 in top 32, which is crazy. And so we did kind of stumble upon the meta call, I guess. And again, it's going to be interesting to see whether or not it continues to be this good when it's targeted down a little bit more. Because the rest of the team that we were running definitely was targeted down a lot, and we managed to get around that by having like Gothitelle and some like unorthodox choices like Iron Hands with Clear Amulet and stuff like that. So I'm not sure how
Yep.
this team looks moving forward, but these are just good Pokemon, and so it definitely is going to exist in some capacity.
Mm-hmm. Uh, Agree with everything. Um, I'm probably like something with these mons is definitely on my radar for OCIC. I don't know if the exact build is like I'm gonna be tinkering. I've got a couple weeks before then, but like all of the mons are fine. So just figuring out how they fit together moving forward, uh,
Mhm.
and just messing with the pieces is pretty much uh, something to do if you're looking at using this for Knoxville or OCIC or wherever else you might play.
Mhm.
The core game plans are good. Um,
Yeah.
like Parrish is going to be good moving forward. It just like uh, I don't know. Everything on the team is so synergistic, just in terms of like the pieces, and so uh, yeah, I don't know. The team felt good to play with. It's good.
Yeah.
Not much to add.
So you put good Pokemon and you go to the first regional of the format and you get to outplay a lot of your opponents and you hopefully have a matchup into the other really good players that you play. And sometimes we didn't, sometimes
Mhm.
we didn't. But that's kind of what it came down to, I think, a lot of times.
Yep.
And yeah, speaking of playing good opponents, Nick, did you want to talk about your tournament run?
Sure. So I mentioned that uh, like about half my rounds, I got to just kind of cruise 2-0 with either the Parish mode or Iron Hands or some combination of the two of them, just because uh, the opposing team was passive enough. And this team just obliterates passive teams through like Taunt Gothitelle, um, the SD Iron Hands, the Parish Song, like it's going to have something that's going to roll over passive teams. And um, yeah, like five of my rounds were just kind of walk up, input buttons, make no plays, sign the match. Like um, two of my rounds were pretty much the opposite of I didn't feel like I had much counterplay. Um, and those two rounds were against Yotem and against Waka. Yotem had Talontusk, and you can watch that on stream. But um, I it base basically you just have to get a lot more turns right than they do in this matchup. Uh, and yeah, it was kind of gross to play. Um, and against Waka, um, I also don't think I played it perfectly, but Covert Cloak and Mungus we mentioned was tricky to use. Stan Jerner did come to one of the games and was not especially great. Notably, Waka side psychic it after it got burned and just did 99 to it to get it off the field because I had like Gothark looking at um, Stan Jerner. And so that was funny. But yeah, it just the covered cloak armor was a headache, and I didn't really have much that I could uh, do against it. In retrospect, I probably did have more that I could have done, but like it was still really rough. Um, and so yeah, those matchups aside, I had three rounds where I had to get, play good Pokemon against a good player, and I went through and on those sets, and so that's how that added up. The first one I had was against Justin Stipe in round three, who ended up finishing 8-2 and bubbling out of cut. Um, he had yeah this team, um, and honestly, I just balled out against him. In game one, I set up a Swords Dance against his Sableye Roaring Moon as the Sableye switched out to um, Iron Hands and his Roaring Moon protected. Uh, and I had switched in my Amoonguss in order to be able to Rage Powder against the Sableye in case he stayed on the board. But the next turn, he went like he switched in his Iron Hands while he protected his Roaring Moon. The next turn, I switched my Amoonguss out to Arcanine as he faked out my Shermer. And he Terra Flying DD'd with his Roaring Moon as I Terra'd my hands Fire Punched his Roaring Moon, and that was the game. And so that was just like a baller sequence that I made, and I'm proud of it. And then game two, I didn't ball out quite as hard. I think I probably just like perished him or something, but like yeah, I was just I was feeling myself that round. Um, The next round that I had to play Pokemon was Max Gilman, who was also in cut, who was running Espathra Sandy Shocks. Um, he's got a lot of Terra Grasses on the team, but outside of Terra Grassing, he doesn't have much Spore counterplay. So the matchup came down to just calling which slot was going to Terra Grass. And if I Spore the other slot, I get way too much time. And I just get to deal damage to a scene because it's like not totally frail, but it's not that bulky either. And just I got a lot of freedom to do whatever I wanted because I played my Amoonguss well. It went to 3 games, but yeah, I made more calls than him basically. And like game 3, in particular, I remember he led Iron Hands, Espathra into my Flutter Mane Amoonguss. He clicked Volt Switch on my Flutter Mane and Protect as I Moonblast his Iron Hands for half and spored the incoming Sandy Shocks. And like that was the type of positions where it's just like if you make the call right, then you're good, and if you make the call wrong, then he gets a lot of time to just do stuff. And yeah, I hit my calls in the set. Third round where I had to play well was against Wolf. Um, I was his last loss in the tournament. He lost to Changzhen on stream, and then yeah, in round 8. Um, basically, like I said, this was the first time I'd ever played Parish, and Wolf is certainly like uh, it's probably down to him and Amelia for who's the most well-known Parish player, and it's probably Wolf. Just these 1-2 regionals with it versus Second at Worlds is like probably Tigers to 2 events. But yeah, so rolling up and like I've never played a Parish mirror before in my life, uh, so I just kind of was figuring it out on the fly. Game 1, we I led Goth Shroom into his Goth Flutter. I had faster Goth, so I faked out his Goth, and he clicked Perish Song as I sport his Flutter Mane. Um, I got to um, basically spore his Mons, start dealing damage to like break his Sash um, before I had to switch my Gothitelle out to get out of Perish. Um, he just kind of uh, had to. So he kept his Goth until the last turn of Perish, and my Amoonguss got trapped and died, but he had a sleeping Gothitelle for it and a Flutter Mane with its Sash broken, if I remember right. That also had to like switch out to, I believe it was Schumer. Um, so my Shimmer goes down. I get to bring in Flutter Mane on the Gothitelle on the last turn, and then recycle my Goth back in. And now I've got Flutter Mane Goth against his Arcshroom. So I get to fake out Perish and kill 2 of his Mons. Um, and so I effectively just traded my Amoonguss for his Arcanist and like also some sleep on his guys. And at that point, it was basically just over, and I could uh, like power through his Flutter, and then Goth beats his Goth because I have leftovers and he has a Citrus Berry. Game 2, we I decided to go with Goth Flutter, and he also stuck with Goth Flutter. Um, he turn 1, I just lost the game. Pretty much, he protected his Flutter as I doubled it with Psychic Shadow Ball, and he Psychicked my Flutter and broke my Sash. He has Terra Grass to avoid getting um, Shadow Balled by our Flutter, and uh, we have Terra Ghost, so Shadow Ball just like always does 85 to 100 dust. So it was just kind of over after turn 1. Some more positioning happened, but like the damage was done, and I'd given up a free hit on my Flutter, and that was already just enough to lose. Game three, we both led the same stuff. But my adaptation was recognizing that he had brought Arkshroom in the back for both games so far. Or no, game one he had Screamtail in the back with Shroom, but he had led Goth Fluttermane, um, and he led Goth Fluttermane all three games, and he had Arkshroom in the back. And so my adaptation or my game plan heading into game three was I was going to kill his Fluttermane, and then Iron Hands was going to Terrifier, and it was going to kill his other three Pokemon. So I led my Goth Flutter. I faked out his Goth. I think I Shadow Ball, but I was supposed to Moonblast on turn one. And I don't remember what he did turn one. I think he hit my Flutter. Um, and turn two, I won the speed tie and I killed his Flutter. And yeah, after that point, I was just like allowed to execute my game plan, and Iron Hands just smoked everything. So like, yeah, I won a speed tie game three basically. And I specifically I had picked the line where if I won the speed tie game three, I won the game.
Did you want to talk about your top 32 match? Or I guess you kind of mentioned
Um,
it a little bit.
yeah, sure. Top 32 was like it was weakness policy, Armor Rouge, which um, like yeah, it's problematic for the same reason Cover Cloak is. The main Armor Rouge counterplay we chose for the tour was Snarl Arcanine with Terra Dark, and if you had an answer to that, it started to get really awkward really quick. Um, I took game one. I don't remember exactly how it happened, um, but uh, yeah, I know. Like I've got my notes and I see what Arbin brought. He led Fluttermane and DD with back armor shroom. But honestly, I'm just kind of blanking on what happened in game one. I know that. Okay, I know that I Terra Steeled my Gothitelle, um, and I think I led Goth Shroom, and just was like taunting stuff, and uh, I got his Fluttermane to sleep. Um, I do remember that my Gothitelle got crit by a Dazzling Gleam, uh, which was, I mean, I wasn't going for that. And I would have been able to Pollen Puff my Gotham, and so I thought that it was doomed, but maybe I got sleep turns or something. And I ended up getting there anyways, despite the turn, or like 3 or so crit. Game two, I think that was the Fluttermane speed tie game, where just we had an early Flutter tie, where if I win, I kill his Flutter and my Flutter's alive, and it snowballs from there, and he won it, and I just didn't have much to kill Fluttermane after that, and so I got an extra hit in and just like dealt too much damage. And game three, I think I got Roaring Moon. Uh, yeah, okay. My notes say it was Fluttermane, Roaring Moon, and I think just yeah, Roaring Moon did too much damage or something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so like it's I also had like there were a bunch of like mild mid groundy type reads where one player gets like the game doesn't entirely hinge on it, but one player like improves their position a solid amount if they get the turn right, and you kind of just have to opt into them repeatedly. And so it was like I got some of them right, but some of them wrong, and I got the late game one that I couldn't afford to get wrong, and so I got knocked out.
Yeah.
So
And
like it happened.
looking forward to day two Swiss, where it does not come down to one set at 8 a.m. Against a bad matchup to decide if you're going to continue playing. But
Yep.
still, really, really impressive run to get to top 32, to be, I think, the ninth or 10th seed overall after Swiss out of 800 people, basically. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, my schedule was insane, by the way. I played against Yotam, who finished 9-1. I had then five other players on my schedule who went 8-2. Uh, I think I had a 7-3 and a 6-4, a 5-5, and then a 1-3 drop. Like, I was like the third or the fourth highest resistance in the tournament, despite having a relatively early loss. Just a lot of my opponents uh, did like really well. So
Mhm.
uh, good
And then,
resistance at least.
and then on the other hand, I did the opposite. I did not have the crazy run that you had in Swiss. I did play. I played like Cortex in round four at 3-0, and he was running the team that Angelo was using. Brian was using to get top eight this regional. And like I mentioned, I missed a Hydro Pump to lose game one, and then he just like read the Arcanine Terra Dark game two to win. But that was funny because we played in the San Diego regionals as well, and we both ended up top cutting after I beat him. So we were joking that we both top cut again. And sadly, that did not happen. He was the highest resistance 7-3, so he just needed to win one more set to make it. But the real story of my tournament was that I played five people who said it was their first time playing at a VGC tournament. And I was joking after round six, that like it's crazy to face someone at 4-1 who was saying it was their first tournament. He was very good. But also like definitely a very new player. And I guess didn't do too hot after playing me. And then I was joking with my friends like, man, I can't believe I faced four people who said it was their first tournament. And then round seven, my opponent is a TCG player who started playing VGC this year, or I guess a former TCG player who started playing VGC this year, and this was their first event. And they did very well. They went 7-3, and they lost their win in to Kyle. So they were actually very good, but it was very funny to see me play that many people who said it was their first time playing at a VGC tournament. Yeah, and then I had some funny moments. I wanted to talk about one of my opponents was running safety goggles for Rigoraph, and they turn one spored my Arcanine, which of course also had safety goggles. And then after the set, and then they were like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I did that." And then after the set, they were like, "Yeah, actually, like I found out that safety goggles block spore earlier today when one of my opponents tried to spore my for Rigoraph," and I thought that was really funny because it seems like they were running a team that they had just kind of gotten from a friend or something.
Yeah, no,
But that was at an undefeated record too. So it was really interesting to see how early rounds, how much variance you could have in terms of how good your opponents might be.
yep.
And then so I think that I really started to get into, other than round four against Nate, this I started to play like known players in round eight, where I played John, who we would carpool to locals together in 2020 when I lived in Indiana. We lived like a few miles away from each other, so it was really funny to see and to play each other at the biggest regional ever in Orlando. But he was running like I can pull up his team. He was running Fluttermoth Dozo stuff. And yeah, he went A2 and just barely bubbled out of top cut as well. And so this set was cool because game one, I looked at our team and I was like, okay, well, Iron Moth is slower than Iron Bundle, so I just lead the Iron Bundle and I outspeed him. But he let Annihilate every game, and he let Annihilate Fluttermane every single game. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to. Game one, I kind of got run over. I led Flutter Bundle, and I went for Icy Wind, Shadow Ball into the Annihilate to get rid of it, and he KO'd my bundle with his Specs Fluttermane, and then he brought an Iron Moth, and I was like, oh, now I just get overpowered. So game two, I did something a little different, and I led a Mungus Iron Hands, and he went for Dazzling Gleam and Final Gambit into Amoonguss, and it does not pick up the KO. And so I got my Spore off, and I won the game from there because I was just up in Mons basically. And then game three, he was like, okay, well, I just barely didn't get there. So what if I Terra Fairy and click Dazzling Gleam? And he did the same thing. And this time I Terra Fired because I didn't want to click Protect turn one. And again, he just barely missed out on the KO. I think I had 5 HP left, so like I actually had some room to burn. But I lived that attack, that double up, and then Sport his Fluttermane. I was up essentially 4-2 and kind of stomped him there. But yeah, it's a scary competition, and I think he maybe made the wrong decision in game three after finding out a calc game two. But yeah, so that
It
was
was a
my
funny Dozo set.
It's what the funny Dozo
It's a
set.
funny Dozo set.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
really scared of it. He brought it game two, and it was a little underwhelming, but it did mean that like I couldn't spore it, and I think he maybe expected a little more Garganackle, because Covert Cloak is a very interesting set on it, and it also, for what it's worth, blocks like Acid Spray stuff, which and Lumina Crash, which I think a lot of people were looking at as well as Dozo enters.
Yep.
So yeah, no, it is actually a cool Dozo set. I didn't really register it at the time, but it beats a lot of the common Dozo counterplay. But yeah, so that was my round eight, and then round nine I played Calvin, and I was like sweating bullets because this was the win and in. If I won this, I cut the regional, and I was like really nervous, and we didn't trade team sheets until the starting whistle, and then I see his team, and it is just the exact team that we've been trying to face all tournament, like literally mon for mon, the entire team folds to the Iron Hand set that we have, and so I just clicked buttons, and the game was over before it started. And so it was really nice to have a win it in that was not especially stressful. And yeah, kind of won that one pretty easily. And unfortunately, he didn't cut. He went 7-3. So yeah,
I mean, yeah, that is what the team is meant to do. Is it's just trying to queue into these teams and roll them,
yeah.
and then
So
have enough tools to play.
and
So
like
yeah,
I said, like you're that's the thing about these big tournaments is like five times you're going to face players who are relatively new, and you're not gonna actually play Pokemon, and you better hope that the other five rounds, ideally, you hit your matchups or you just get to outplay your opponents. And you're always gonna hit a couple that you didn't, and I just got kind of lucky that I didn't really face any matchups that were especially unwinnable, which I think contributed to my performance. The last round I played Alex, who's a good friend of ours, who is known for running Perish, ironically enough. But we both had locked in top cut. We actually did the math before the set, looking at our resistances, and our resistances were both pretty similar, and we were both pretty safe into top cut. So the tournament, the set did not really matter. And I think he was very tired and also not taking it too seriously because he definitely tossed game one. He Terra Fairy'd his Fluttermane while I was under Perish Song and trapped, and just like couldn't switch out the next turn and lost the set because of that, or lost game one because of that. And game two came down to sleep turn, so like it was a close set. But yeah, I think that we were both playing pretty casually there. And then in top cut, I finally broke my curse. This is my fourth regional top cut, and this is the first time I've won a game in top cut. So that was a big deal to me, especially beating number one ranked player in the world, Luca Paz, who of course Liverpool regional champion, coming off a really impressive performance there, and known for using Dindozo at that tournament. But this was a set that I think I had a slight advantage here in terms of preparation because team sheets were not released until 3 a.m. And so neither of us really had access to our opponent's team sheet until the morning of, but he was on stream and I was not. And so I don't know if he knew my team going into that night, but I knew his team, and he was also player side as well. So Rajan, who I was rooming with, was nice enough while I was trying to get some sleep to go and get HP stats for me and get some idea of how bulky his Pokemon were. So I know he was a bulky Goldengo, for example, and I know he was reasonably bulky Talonflame, and that changed the way I approached the matchup. And so game one, I lead Fluttermane and Arcanine into Goldengo and I think Talonflame. No, Goldengo and Dindozo. And he makes a really weird middle ground play where he goes for Substitute and Make It Rain. And I just go for Wisp Protect and get the Wisp off on Dindozo so it stops doing damage because it's at -1 behind a Substitute and burnt. And the Goldengo doesn't really do any damage. And then I get to double the Goldengo, and it's okay if he switches into Tatsugiri because it's
Dozo's
still
burn.
the
Yeah.
Dozo's not actually doing any damage. And then I get to perish the Dindozo once the Tatsugiri comes in, and I kind of win the game pretty comfortably. And then game two, I say, okay, he's going to change it up a little bit. So he leads Great Tusk Talonflame. And like we mentioned, Iron Bundle just outspeeds Great Tusk in Tailwind. So I just lead Arcanine and Iron Bundle, and I click Extreme Speed Freeze Dry. And he protects turn one and Tailwinds. And then turn two, I click Extreme Freeze Dry, and I pick up the KO. And then he brings in Goldengo. And because I know that he is bulky Goldengo and not like max speed timid, I know that he's going to underspeed my Fluttermane again, or not my Fluttermane, my Iron Bundle. And so I just get to go for Hydro Pump Flare Blitz and pick up the KO there too. And then the set just kind of ends because I've taken 2 KOs and still have my Perish mode. So it was a pretty anticlimactic top 32 set. But yeah, that's kind of how that went down. And
Yep.
honestly, I prefer them anticlimactic a little bit. And
Yeah,
so,
like as much as I've been hating on the team, there were just like a lot of those rounds where we just kind of rolled,
mhm,
and um, yeah, I think the team was designed to do that, and it did it.
yeah. And then in top 16, I played Wolfie, who of course had played Nils earlier, and so I got the chance to talk to Nils a little bit before the round, and he did something a little unexpected because he was leading like Fluttermane Gothitelle, I think, into you by the end of the set.
Yeah,
Uh,
every single game against me, he led Fluttermane Goth,
mhm.
and yeah, he figured out that that was not what he was supposed to do.
Right, so he just dropped the Gothitelle altogether. Our Gothitelle having taunt made it really good in that matchup. And so he let Palathin game one, Palathin Fluttermane, I think,
Yeah.
into my I think I led Mungus and Gothitelle, and
Mhm.
I was in a really good position, except I made a mistake. I had KO'd the Palathin, and the Fluttermane was down to really low health, and it was forced to Terra Grass, and I switched out my low health Gothitelle into Fluttermane and brought down to Sash, and that was really dumb. In my head, I thought that the most important part of this matchup was going to be keeping a mod advantage so I could parry song him in the end game. And what I hadn't realized is that he had Screamtail in back, and with my Fluttermate in Sash, then the Booster Energy Screamtail just outspeeds it and actually threatens it with Play Rough as compared to not threatening it at all. And so that was a pretty big mistake on my part. And it was still like somewhat close, but he managed to pull it back because I just made a pretty big misplay on that one turn, which is kind of what happens when you play a player like Wolf. You're not really allowed to make mistakes because he is going to punish them to the best of his ability, even when you're ahead. So that was game one, and then game two he led Fluttermane and Amoongus into the same. I forget if I led the same thing or if I led Fluttermane this time, but I forgot what I led Gothitelle for sure. But it was the set was pretty close. I had to get a one turn wake to stay in the game, and I got it. And I like on the last turn of parish count, instead of switching out my Iron Hands, I went for a Fire Punch to KO the Amoongus switch in because his Arcanine had to switch out, and I picked it up from like 60. I had to Terrafire to do that, and so I got rid of his Arcanine, got rid of his Amoongus, and it was down to his Screamtail plus Arcanine into my Fluttermane that is down to his Focus Sash and full health Amoongus, which seems strange, but he doesn't have Snarl, so I actually win that because the Arcanine was in range where if it Flare Blitzed my Amoongus, it would go down to Shadow Ball, and I could just Spore the Screamtail, and then 1v1 it. And so I thought I was going to win that game, and then he Flare Blitz crits the Amoongus and takes it down, and so the Fluttermane just doesn't do anything and loses. So I mean, obviously, I needed the one turn wake just to have a chance of winning that game. If I didn't, then he just has a whole ass Amoongus and I lose. But uh, yeah, it was a little unfortunate to go out that way. But I really just shouldn't have made a mistake game one, I think, is really what it comes down to. He's a fantastic player, and it was cool to see Parrish win the regional. So yeah, that was my tournament run. Again, really, really happy with how I did and how the team performed. For both of us to top cut again, the biggest regional ever. It's really it's really pretty crazy. And yeah, I guess we'll have the rental code on screen, and of course the paste will be in the description down below. And you can also go follow Nick on all of the socials, which will be in the description. But yeah, did you have any final words or shout outs that you wanted to give?
Shout outs to the prep group that we had. Burns, Angel, and Rajan. They helped out. Shout outs to Sebas, who also helped out with prep. Nice to see that he's back in the scene. Uh, Shout outs. Who else do I need to shout out? Just for like team prep stuff. That's about it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Shout outs to my parents. They're always great. But like, yeah, that's about it. I think. Sorry if I'm forgetting anyone. I probably am realistically, but yeah. Um,
Well, knowing you, you're gonna be on here in 2 weeks after you cut Oceania, and then you can remind anyone who reminds you. You can shout them out too.
sure.
And so yeah, same. Everyone who helped build this team. Again, I take so little credit in the actual putting together this team. I mostly helped out in like prepping and figuring out matchups in the last week or so. But Justin and Nels were the really big contributors there, and they really figured out the metagame as much as they could, and I think we had a really good meta call as a result. And then I just want to thank everyone who I met at the regional. It was a great time. It was like kind of a miserable experience because of the format of the tournament, but like the people who I met and got to hang out with and talk to really made it a great experience instead. And so I loved meeting everyone who watched the channel, who watches the Twitch streams, and I appreciate all the kind words. And yeah, those are, I guess, all of the comments that I have. And so thank you all for watching. And until next time, I will see you all later.
See you around.